It is 6:30, and it is Thursday, January 8th, and this meeting is our first meeting of 2015, and it's our organizational meeting. It will be followed immediately by a work session and business meeting, and I will chair the organization meeting, and when we get to board action items, I'll turn it over to our elected board president. So with that, if you would please call the roll.
Yes, Mr. Bartz.
Attendance.
Here.
Mrs. Fiesel.
Here.
Mr. O'Brien.
Here.
Mr. White.
How many meetings is that now that he's missed?
I believe the last statistic I saw was 9 in the last 18. Is that correct? So this would be
10 of 19.
10 of 19.
10 of 19.
Duly noted.
I left him 2 voicemails, asked him if he was coming. I didn't hear anything back.
And Mr. King.
Here. If you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can we have a motion to approve the agenda for the organizational meeting, please?
So, you,
Oh, there-
ladies first, new year.
And there
So
be a second.
moved.
Second.
Oh, man, I logged out.
Any discussion? You call the roll, please.
Mrs. Fiesel.
Here, yes.
Mr. Bartz.
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes. And number 5, an order here, the election of officers. We will now open nominations for election of our board president for, again, 2015. So do we have a nomination?
Mr. King, I would like to nominate Mr. O'Brien.
And would somebody like to second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Are there any other nominations before the board? If not, let's have a motion to close the nominations.
I move to close the nominations.
And a second.
Seconded.
Any discussion? If you would call a roll on closing the nominations, please,
A second.
and then we'll take action.
Mrs. Fiesel.
Yes.
Mr. Bartz.
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes. And then if you would, Mr. Secretary for the board, call the roll for the election of president for the nomination of Mr. O'Brien.
Mr. Bartz.
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel.
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes. And would you please provide the oath of office?
Say I do. I, Kevin O'Brien, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, that I will faithfully and impartially discharge my duties as President of the Board of Education in and for the said Olentangy Local School District, Delaware County, Ohio, to the best of my ability and in accordance with laws now in effect and hereafter to be enacted during my continuance in said office and until my successor is chosen and qualified.
And congratulations. And with that, we'll open up our nominations for board vice president for 2015. Do we have a motion for that position, please?
I nominate Julie Wagner Fiesel for vice president.
And a second, please?
Seconded.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, can we have a motion to close the nominations for vice president, please?
So moved.
Second.
And second, would you call the roll then on the closing of the nominations?
Yes. Mr. Bartz.
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel.
Yes.
And Mr. King.
Yes. And if you would please call the roll for the election of the nomination of Ms. Fiesel.
Yes. Mr. O'Brien.
Yes.
Mr. Bartz.
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes. And again, if you would please provide, Julie, if you would take the oath of office, please.
I, Julie Wegner-Fiesel, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge my duties as Vice President of the Board of Education in and for said Olentangy Local School District, Delaware County, Ohio, to the best of my ability and in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereafter to be enacted during my continuance in said office and until my successor is chosen.
I do. Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations, Julie. For item 6, board action items, then I'll turn that over to Mr. O'Brien.
All right, thank you, Dave. So I'll entertain a motion to approve board action items A through K. Those items include next year's schedule, the committees, the board liaisons, and we'll get to the board liaisons in the discussion. The district organizations, the board service fund, OSBA membership, MEC membership, treasurer, superintendent, purchasing agent, and the authorizations for the director of business and facilities.
So move for approval.
A second.
Okay. So on discussion, we will go through each committee. So for the business advisory committee, typically we'll do 2 representatives. Myself and Mr. King did that last year. I think we want to continue to do the
Yes.
business advisory committee. So we can put O'Brien and King in those slots. For the facilities committee, I believe that was Mr. Bartz who's going to take that one.
Yes, please.
Okay. And then, Julie, were you doing that again?
No.
Dave.
Dave is going
Okay,
to
that's
take
right.
that.
So Mr. King and Mr. Bartz. That was finance. I had. Okay. So for finance and audit committee, it was myself, and are you going to do finance and audit?
Yeah.
Okay. And Mr. King on finance and audit committee. The policy committee would be Mr. King and Ms. Fiesel. The school, the advocacy committee was Ms. Fiesel and Mr. Bartz.
Yes.
Okay. And on item 2, the regional assignments, Delaware Area Career Center was Ms. Fiesel. Were you going to be the board president there again?
Well, I was elected last night.
Congratulations.
Wow, you're 2 for 2.
And then for OSBA, we representative for student achievement. If you did that last year, right?
Yeah, I think that was one of my first appointments. I'm happy to continue
Yeah.
on with that, yes.
Mr. Bartz? I'll be the delegate.
Right.
And then the legal representatives, I believe, are Mr. Bartz and Mr. King. So that should fill out that exhibit. Okay.
Got it.
So the motion, second discussion. Please call the roll.
On the, I just have one other thing that we have in here are the list of committee or board meetings for the year.
Yes.
Just to point out that if we need to redo them or reassign them,
Right.
we will. But this is, we always let people know a year in advance when we're going to be meeting, and we can contact each other by email, text, phone, even mail if we can't make it. So I just want to put that out there and we've moved meetings for people before when they let us know that they can't make it.
And start times, so as well.
Yep.
We are changing the start time back to 6 p.m. from 6:30, so we'll do that for next year.
I do have one request to change, but it can wait. But since it's soon, if I may, I'll just go ahead and mention February 12th.
Okay.
I'll be out of the country. If we can maybe move that to the Thursday before, the 5th, or whatever works out. But
Okay.
I would have to miss it otherwise. I hate to do
We'll see.
that.
I'm sure we can make something
Yeah.
work.
And I know that I will have to miss September 10th. I'll be gone all that week for work, a work event. But again, if we can't move it, it's just a work session, and I understand we've got to get our work done.
Okay. Any other dates that we might be?
Not at this point.
Okay. Very good. So now,
Is that whole week, by the way, are you both going that whole week?
I'm gone
Yes.
I'm gone that whole week.
Okay, so you're
Yeah,
looking at a
so-
different week.
Yeah,
Okay.
but if you can't accommodate it, I
Yeah,
understand.
sure.
Good? All right, go ahead.
All discussion closed.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes. I'll now entertain a motion to adjourn the organizational meeting.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Please call roll.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes. So we were going to take a brief recess, and the recess is now over. Now we'll go to the work session, or business session. So again, this is Thursday, January 8th, 2015. This is the work and business session following the organizational meeting for the Olentangy Local Schools Board of Education. I'll now take a motion to approve the agenda.
Roll call, please, since we
Do we
technically
have to
adjourned.
re-roll call?
Yeah.
Okay.
Since we
Please call the roll,
technically
Mr.
adjourned.
Graham.
Mr. Bartz?
Still here.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes, I am still here.
Mr. King?
Yes.
And
Oh,
Mr.
President or something.
And Mr. O'Brien?
I am still here, yes. So I guess, does that make it
Oh,
10 out of 20?
that would be 10 out of 20. I will change my.
You're keeping score at home?
I am. For those at home.
So we approve, now I can entertain a motion to approve the
Yes.
agenda? Right, thank you.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes. Okay, we will now start the actual board work session, and the first item up is the Delaware City TIF, or Tax Incremental Financing Project. Tom Homan from Delaware City is here, as well as...
Sean Hughes.
Where would you like us?
Oh, at the podium, please?
Yeah, at the podium, only because we record.
Oh, fine.
Do you need a hand, Sean?
We're going to be setting up a couple of...
Yeah, I think it's on. Is it on?
Is that on?
Yep.
Okay.
It's good.
We're going to be setting up a couple of exhibits here just for reference points. I want to thank the superintendent and the Board of Education for accommodating the City of Delaware this evening to discuss a very, very important transportation project for our county. It's the Sawmill Parkway project. You're all familiar with it. It's been in the works for the last probably 25 years. I've been with the city almost 16 years as city manager, and during my tenure, this has probably been one of the most challenging projects I've ever been a part of. And it's challenging because it's a county project that goes through the city, and we have to, as a city, participate financially in the project. So we're here tonight to talk about a financial tax incentive financial agreement that would allow the city to actually fund this project. I want to make sure everybody can see this. These are just reference points, as I said. The current parkway terminates at Hyatt's Road. The project is going to go north up through past Bunny Station Road, north up to US 42. And once it hits 42, it will go another 1,600 feet north of 42, and eventually, someday, connect to Section Line Road. The purpose of the 1,600 additional feet north of 42 is to provide increased economic development in that area of the city. We have, if you've driven 42, you've probably noticed some of the large manufacturing plants on 42. Those plants were oriented for the eventual Sawmill Parkway. So we made a pledge to those companies years ago when they located there, but someday Sawmill Parkway would come through. So hopefully that will be happening. We reached an agreement, the city did, with the county back in July. Following that agreement, we started our discussions with both Olentangy, Delaware City, and the Career Center. The Career Center, just parenthetically, has a different approval process than Olentangy and Delaware City, but we're here tonight to talk about the tax increment financing cooperative agreement that would be necessary to make this work. Pursuant to the agreement, the city is obligated to pay back the county 37.5% of the roadway that goes through the city. And that was a lot of negotiation over that. That 37.5% represents about $9 million. That's beyond our means, and our proposal to fund that was through a tax increment financing arrangement. And our Economic Development Director, Sean Hughes, can talk about that in a couple of minutes. But that's kind of the linchpin of this deal. And it's a linchpin because if we can't obviously get the tax increment financing put in place through our work with your board and Delaware City Schools, the project essentially can't go ahead. So it's critical. This is land, obviously, some of this land is in the school district. Sean can point to the area. There's a highlighted area down here, which is really the Olentangy district. The balance is the city school district. But this land is otherwise going to sit dormant but for this roadway. So really this is really all commercial and industrial development. This is not residential development. So this is a good rateable, if you will, for the schools from an economic development standpoint. So we're here tonight to talk about the agreement, how that would work, what your participation would be, and to answer any questions you have. We have met with Brian and Wade back in October. We had a follow-up meeting in December, made some changes to the agreement at the request of the schools. We can talk about that a little later. But our hope is that at one of your subsequent board meetings you can act on the agreement. But I can't underscore enough the importance of really this partnership between the city, the two school districts in the city, Olentangy and Delaware, and Delaware County for a roadway project that is one of the first north-south new roadway projects that the county's had in a long time. And so, we're anxious to move ahead, but really want to provide you as much time as you need to get any questions answered about this, how this would work. We have to take the long view here. Our industrial park out on Pittsburgh Drive has been there almost 40 years, and that's really the area that we're talking about is almost twice the size of our industrial park. So this could be 60 years in terms of the full build out of all of this area. But over time, obviously, those are jobs to our community that helps the economic base of the district. So we're excited about it from that standpoint. So with that said, I want to turn things over to Sean just to talk about how the agreement would work. And Craig Daniels is here from Squire Sanders. They've helped us draft this, and we've gone back and forth on that. Before I do that, I want to give a shout out, though, to Jill Simpson. She's one of your middle school teachers, and I've been in this building twice for her project-based learning initiative late last year and in 2013. It's a fabulous program, and it exposes the students to Delaware County, the county seat, and has brought more people down to our First Friday. So we're excited about that. But that's a great program, and the kids have gotten a lot of benefit, I think, out of the exposure to some projects they've been doing. So that's kudos to whoever is handling that program. It's really positive. So with that said, I'll introduce Sean Hughes, our Economic Development Director.
Thank you, Tom.
Good evening, board members. I'm Sean Hughes. I'm the Economic Development Director for the City of Delaware. Apologize for the distance of the displays here, but as Tom mentioned, the green area there is about essentially 750 acres that will be covered under a tax increment financing district. Now, how that will work is that anytime a project comes in, we try to land a project, that parcel that project goes to purchase, say it's, for example, say 6 acres, that parcel would then be activated within that TIF district, and that 30 years for that TIF will start at that time that project is completed, and that's usually when they take occupancy of the building's completed. So As Tom mentioned, there's about 750 acres there, so if you could do the math, if a typical project for the city of Delaware is anywhere from 6 to 15 acres, 45,000 to 60,000 square foot buildings, anywhere from generally 10 to 60 employee facilities, high-paying jobs. Generally, most of our facilities are more R&D and technology focused than they are straight up old-fashioned manufacturing, which is fantastic because it relates well to your district, as well as the changing demographics of the city of Delaware. The way this will work, we wanted to make sure that this TIF mechanism was a true partnership between the school district and the city. So we made sure that there were some revenue sharing components built into it, that in a way that we could still make our commitment to the county commissioners of some $9 million to pay for the infrastructure project being Sawmill Parkway extension, but that we were able to make sure that everybody was sharing in the proceeds of that economic development. With this particular TIF district, what we are proposing is essentially for the first 15 years of any activated TIF, the school district would receive a 25% pilot payment from us directly to the school district after we receive it from the county commissioners. For the second 15 years, 16 through 30, that would move to 50%. So we would receive the full 100% of, generally in this case, and I'll get to abatements here with CRAs and whatnot, but generally it's going to be on the building or the property itself, the real property, not the building, for the first 15 years. We'll get that check from the county auditor. We'll then disperse out that 25 for the first 15 and 50 for the second 15 off to you. At the point that we have fulfilled our obligation to the county commissioners, we will then, we've reached that $9 million or whatever it takes at that time to pay off our debt to the county commissioners. We will then reduce the 100% TIF or any future in that TIF district, any future TIFs, to 50%. And that full 50% TIF will then go back, it will be dispersed to you for those properties in your school district to make you whole for what you had essentially given up in the first portion of the TIF. Now, we say a 30-year TIF, but as Tom mentioned, this could be 60 years, right? Because if, for instance, that last far southeast corner there doesn't develop until year 30, there's 30 years right beyond that that parcel would be active. So you'd be receiving, if we had paid back the commissioners at the point, you'd receive 50% of that property tax. Plus, you'd, on the first 50% that's not TIF'd, you'd be receiving your regular dispersal of what your millage is on that property. Now, here's the interesting part. In order to attract companies in, as you guys have probably encountered multiple times, we've encountered a situation in the world where everybody gives incentives, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not uncommon now to be requesting a company to request 100% 15 years on a community reinvestment area tax abatement. So what does that do? That's essentially abating the building that they put on that property. So that, for the first 15 years, is not included in the TIF. That company's not paying taxes on that asset. Okay. The second 15 years, and that's why we designed it in this way. The second 15 years of that TIF, that building actually kicks in, and then you're receiving 50% of the property and the building it sits on. Correct. So that works out very nicely, and something that we've done for a long time as a community in partnership with Delaware City Schools, we will negotiate a school pilot payment of 30% on 100% CRAs that the company pays directly to you, and that's 30% of what you normally would have received if that abatement was not in place. Does that make sense? Now, with the Ohio Revised Code, if it's 100%, or actually anything over 50% CRA, and the total payroll is over $1 million, we are to go into a revenue sharing and school compensation agreement with you anyhow. So at that point, what we're proposing is we do our 32.5% of that payroll tax to you, and if that does not equal what the 30% pilot payment that the company would have paid you before is, we will negotiate a pilot payment for the difference that the company would pay you on top of our school compensation agreement. So there's a couple different mechanisms there to help make sure that we're sharing in that benefit. I think I've covered pretty much all the scenarios. That covers. Does anybody have any questions?
So that's 750 acres, that's Olentangy's. So essentially, you're taking 750 acres off the table that can be developed for residential.
Correct.
It's actually, what, 240, 240 for ours, isn't it?
Apologize.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
This
So
is
it's-
50 here, but the Olentangy School District is right through.
Okay. So how much is it?
It's about 240, about 30% of it's ours, a little over 30%
Okay,
of
so
it's ours.
240 some acres
Yep.
that cannot be developed for residential use. So we
Correct.
do not have students coming that we have to educate. So I want to make that
No
clear.
rooftops.
Yeah, it's
Right.
a good economic base.
Right.
I mean, it
That's
really
what
is.
people
and
need to know.
That's what our pitch has been to Delaware City Schools as well, and they see that. The entire area, the entire shaded area is about 1,600 acres. That's what's going to take, considerable amount of time to develop. But
And when do you plan on starting the extension?
well, right now, the county engineer is fully in design mode for the piece that goes all the way up to 42. If we can get this agreement with the schools and the county wrapped up in the January, February timeframe, he's ready to start bidding the project later this year, early next year, so we can start construction. And we've asked, obviously, for our standpoint, that we want to advance the piece north of 42 because we've got some industrial development up there as well, but he obviously knows it's got to start at Hyatt's and it's got to go north. So, their plan would be to be under construction probably later this year, early next year. What the county needs to do is, once the two school districts have hopefully approved the tax cooperative agreement, the county then puts their financing in place because they've got to go out and finance this thing. So they're waiting right now on the outcome of these actions by the two school boards, and once that occurs, we then have to demonstrate that we've done what we are obligated to do. We provide that information to the county, and they then can go to the market and finance the project. So this is really kind of the last piece of the process, but it's the most important. I mean, this is very critical.
I just want our voters to realize that, if this isn't done, then you risk residential development possibly going in.
That could happen, and also it's unlike a lot of TIFs that promote some kind of commercial development. This is really the public purpose is the roadway itself,
Yeah.
and there's not going to be associated malls. I mean, Polaris is obviously a TIFed area, and there's so many
Right.
other areas that generally support some sort of commercial development. But for this roadway, this area isn't really going to develop. So we think if you take the long view, the districts, everybody is better off from a transportation standpoint and an economic development standpoint. The transportation is critical. I mean, anybody who's driven
Now
north
going
and
up
south.
23, you're stopping, on the way up and.
And from a
Yeah.
district standpoint, it obviously helps you from a busing, from a transportation standpoint
Well, that's
as
the
well.
question, I guess. Have you done any kind of an early traffic study survey to understand the number of vehicles that are when this completes, that will then go between 42 and Ensemble Parkway? I'm thinking more of a public safety. I understand the connectivity part
Sure.
of it, that's fine, but we have elementary, middle school, and a high school right there. And so that many more cars coming in and out of the district
Yeah.
with young drivers, parents, et cetera.
Sure.
Do you have any numbers
I
on
know,
that yet?
I don't have them here tonight, but I know the county engineer has them, and I can provide those back to
Yeah, we'd like
to
to,
Mr.
I'd like
Lucas.
to see that.
Yeah.
I think we'd like to see that just from, I
Yeah.
would imagine you have that
Yeah,
somewhere.
absolutely.
And are both the two school districts being considered both getting the same
Yes.
structure?
Yeah, absolutely. That's how it was laid out, was that we wanted to treat both equally.
And in the county, is the county getting a similar structure? Or is the county getting 75% for 10 years?
No, the counties, yeah, the counties in overlapping jurisdiction, their taxes are abated as well, and so are the cities, because we've got millage, we've got inside millage in that area as well. I mean, the county benefits ultimately because they've got the roadway project and any kind of sales tax. It's probably not a whole lot of sales tax in there because it's mostly industrial.
Right.
Has our legal counsel reviewed the agreement, I would assume? And who is that? Who is the firm or individual who's reviewed?
It's Rich and Gillis.
Okay.
So I mean, right now, that's 240 undeveloped acres. That's probably being assessed as what, farmland?
Yeah, it's
farmland.
CAUV
Right.
person right now, and if you, for the whole 240 acres, are maybe getting $7,000 approximately out of it currently.
So
So,
don't talk a lot of dollars.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming in because so many times we don't have
Yeah.
the jurisdictions coming in to present to us, so we don't have all the information that you've given us tonight. But I can say that, anything that's going to bring, jobs to our county is a good thing.
Yeah,
Kind of
and
a good balance, commercial versus residential.
Yeah.
Well, two important words that you mentioned, strategic and partnership. So
Yeah.
I concur with that attitude. The
Yeah, I
more
mean,
that we all cooperate together as political entities, the better.
Absolutely, and that's really that's the way it's going to make this work. And I think we're really, as a region, we're going to stand to benefit a great deal from the transportation and the economic development perspective.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
That's good.
No.
Again, thank you for coming. Appreciate it. And
Okay.
Thank you very much. Obviously, take it up at a
Take it
business
up at a
session.
next meeting.
Yeah, and in the meantime, if there are any questions, just let Mr. Lucas know, and we'll follow up. And congratulations on whoever your appointment tonight, and Ms. Fiesel, your appointment as well. And
Thank you.
thanks a lot for having us.
Yep,
Great.
thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
Okay, next on the agenda is work session item B, the Schoology presentation. Jessica Fields, please. In supporting cast. Welcome.
Good evening. Well, thank you guys for having us. I'm Jessica Fields. I'm the Instructional Technology Supervisor, and I joined the Curriculum Department last year. So I'm excited to share with you our learning management system that we use here at Olentangy. In the Curriculum Department, our focus is really backward design, and that's not different for Instructional Technology. We look at what a 12th grade student needs digitally as a learner walking out of our doors. What will they need to be college and career readiness? Ready. And one of the things that we see is that when students go on to college or into the career, they are working with a learning management system. OSU, part of Carmen, is a learning management system. OU uses Blackboard, and we have selected Schoology. What's really nice about Schoology is we're sort of transitioning out of websites, which can be a little stagnant. It's kind of a one-way communication, more into what we consider, 21st century skills. So a few things I wanted to highlight, and what I like about Schoology is the communication aspect. A lot of our students, they don't have an email account, so it has that feature where they can communicate with their teachers. Teachers can communicate with students. And the collaboration aspect. Teachers can actually create courses together so that we can have, more bodies working on the alignment of our curriculum. and what the students experience is similar class to class. And then also the increased access to curriculum, which is sort of what you see with websites. What's interesting is the bullet point number 3 where it says user-centric. It definitely has a Facebook feel, and what's interesting is this actually started with students at Liberty High School. So in 2012, we had a bunch of students wanting to have a platform where they could work collaboratively, where they could share notes, where they could do projects together. And at that point, we didn't have anything as a district. So our technology department noticed that a lot of students were using it, then teachers started catching on, and so that we actually took the steps to purchase what we call an enterprise Schoology account, which is basically we're creating that safeguarding for our students. Anybody can get a Schoology account. Again, it's similar to Facebook, but we have opted to go the enterprise route so that our students are in this kind of gated garden. And then another good feature is that parents can have accounts as well. When you sign into Schoology, this is kind of the basic look. You can see the recent activity page, which is basically just your feed page. Across the top is how you kind of toggle between your courses and your groups. The resource section, that is where students can store files, and it syncs with Google Drive. So what's really nice is they don't have to go out to Microsoft Word or out to Google. They can just store all of their stuff in the resource. It's really a one-stop shop. Along the far left, you can see that they have grades. There's a gradebook feature that teachers use. There's a calendar. This is probably one of the best features because students can click on the calendar and they see all of their courses in one spot. And I have a teacher that's going to share that a little bit later. When you actually click on a course, teachers can kind of design it the way they want. But if you look at the right, what's really nice is it keeps students accountable. It's about that student ownership. They have reminders, they have upcoming assignments because there is an online submission feature. They take quizzes, there's discussion boards, and then on the right is kind of how they keep up to date with what's going on in their class. So I want to introduce the teachers that I have with me. I wanted to select one teacher from each grade level that is using Schoology. I have Kevin Pulfer. He's from Olentangy Meadows. He's a 3rd grade teacher. I have Kristen McMahon. She's from Liberty Middle School, and she's an 8th grade math teacher. And I have Brandon Roerig. He's a math teacher at OHS. So I'm going to have Kevin kind of take over to share what we're doing at the elementary level.
Good evening. Well, I want to start out just by kind of prefacing this. I understand why I was chosen to stand up here. I mean, as Jessica said, this started out as a high school initiative, and I've been using this in my class. This is the 4th year, and I was one of the first elementary teachers to kind of jump on board with this. And a lot of my kids have older brothers, older sisters, or parents who are on Facebook, on Schoology, so it was something that was motivating for them, and it was something that I've definitely put a lot of time into, and just want to say what I'm going to show you are some of the highlights of what I've done, but in networking with other elementary teachers, there are a lot of different features that make sense at different grade levels, even at the elementary level. The kindergarten classroom using Schoology is going to look a lot different than a 5th grade classroom, so these are just some of what I've used in 3rd grade, but it's not meant to be representative of what every single elementary teacher is using. So what I've seen early on is a lot of my kids think they know what it's like to be in a Facebook setting, or think they know what their older brothers and older sisters are doing, but they really don't know the first thing about how to behave in an online environment. So Schoology gives me a way to kind of introduce them to that digital literacy piece. And I've got a discussion up here that kind of models where it's went. And in the beginning, I usually start out with some sort of a basic discussion just to get a feel for what they're going to post. And most kids want to play grammar police or spelling police, and they're giving very broken sentences, much worse than what they would handwrite. So there's a bit of an adjustment they have to make to know how to behave in this type of an environment. So a lot of it is me modeling and interacting with them, and having a lot of learning, teachable moments where this is how you behave in this type of environment, this is what's acceptable, and it kind of starts that beginning of that online language so that it's more comfortable for them as they advance throughout the years. And with any language, research says it's best if you learn it young. So I feel like Schoology definitely gives me a great opportunity to work in to build those language skills early on. And then with a lot of the publicity made to Common Core, park testing, next generation testing. It's nice to be able to introduce them to a lot of those skills they're going to need at an earlier age. So the testing feature on Schoology allows you to create assessments, so I'm able to expose them to clicking, scrolling, dragging and dropping, and just the novelty of it as well makes it a lot easier to motivate them. They're interested in doing this. They feel like they're more grown up or more like their older brothers and older sisters. So I have a lot going for me at the elementary level. And then just understanding what's appropriate to type into a written response box, and understanding on that question in the lower right, you can choose more than one answer. Often kids just looking at some of what's been released with Park and what's been released with some of these online assessments, it's them understanding how to read directions and knowing that it's not always going to be just pick one or just type one sentence or click one word. As far as the interaction piece, it's very convenient to be able to upload not just discussions and quizzes, but I've been able with the password protected environment to upload pictures from field trips, charts we've created in class. You can create polls on there. There's a lot of different interactive media that you can upload onto there and house in that one place, but also you're able to interact with your colleagues. I'm able to share lesson plans, tests that I've created on here, or tests that I upload with teachers from other schools. So you're able to network with other people outside of your building and create a broader environment throughout all of Olentangy and even outside of Olentangy. And then I really enjoy just that ease of use. There are a lot of learning management systems out there, but I'm able to organize everything into folders. I can put my quizzes, my discussions, links from the internet. Everything can go inside of here for me, and you can see that Earth's resources is shaded. So I have the ability from my account to lock out different things that I don't want them to see. So as we go throughout the unit, I can expose them to what makes sense at that time, add in new resources, and then when it's time, I can then activate that quiz. They can take that over and over again, and this is the same view that they would see, except anything I've got shaded out, they wouldn't get to see. So it just gives them a lot more choice. I have kids using this from home, and they are willingly doing this. It just gives them much more of a 21st century feel. It feels more like what they're using outside of here, matching up with video games, with media that they're exposed to, and that motivation piece is so critical. And you're going to see a lot more with Kristen and Brandon, but I'm going to go up with them.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
For your students, are they accessing this on laptops or on tablets?
4 years ago when I started out, we were just using the building set of laptops, and the majority of the time was done at home, I would say. It was probably, I had to schedule a time in the lab, so I might get an hour a week, but I had kids throughout there, maybe a third of them that would be on for multiple hours from home. And then last year from Olentangy Education Foundation, I received a grant to get a class set of Chromebooks, and I still would say they spend more time on Schoology outside of the classroom just because of that choice, that ability to explore in that environment, whereas a lot of times at school I'm pushing them towards specific areas and they want the freedom to be able to go beyond, so it'll be opened up to them for much more outside of school as well.
And I'm just trying to gauge, technology accessibility outside the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think the majority of your students have accessibility?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we've had, before I had the class set, we were asking students to bring in devices from home to supplement, to try to work around it. And it might not always be a laptop, but when I did that during that year, I had 25 students that year, and I only had to supply devices for 3 of them.
Good.
So the majority of them were allowed to, had access and were allowed to bring it in. Mm-hmm. And throughout the years, I'd say I've only had 1 or 2 kids every year where I've had to arrange something different.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kristen McMahon, and this is my 3rd year in the Olentangy School District. And I am a teacher that I feel really lucky because the elementary teachers have been on board, and so the kids come to me in the middle school setting basically understanding Schoology and knowing how to use it. So all of the 3 years that I've been teaching here, it's something that I've used daily, and I've put a lot of time into making the resources accessible for students because I think it's a great way for them to be involved with my course and for parents to understand what's going going on in my class as well. So because I think it's so important, I start off the beginning of the year modeling the expectations that I have for Schoology usage and showing them how they can use Schoology to help them succeed in my class. So I have them do a Schoology assignment that I show up on the screen. I have them participate in a discussion. I have them complete an assignment, so they're submitting something on Schoology, and then I have them like what Jessica first talked about, a status, which I use nightly to update them about the homework. So I just think it's really important for me to start off the year by demonstrating my expectations and how in my classroom I will use Schoology. So part of the first assignment I have them do is to participate in a discussion like Kevin talked about. The thing I really like about the discussion is students can reply to each other, I can reply to a student, they can kind of have that collaboration aspect even when they're outside of my classroom, so they don't have to be inside talking to each other. They can be at home, they can be in study hall, and things like that. So I think that that's a great way to incorporate digital communication and 21st century skills. The thing that I take a lot of pride in my Schoology class is the access to the resources that I provide in class. So every single piece of paper that I hand out in my class is put up on the Schoology page for the students. So this includes notes keys that from the lesson each day, homework worksheets, homework answer keys so that students can check their work, videos that we may be viewed in class, additional practice resources or worksheets, and anything else that I would happen to give them in class, such as blank quizzes. So I'll put the formatives on Schoology so that students can reprint them off and complete problems maybe that they missed and then check their answers. So something that I really like about this is I've really trained my students that if they are out of my classroom for a day, no matter if they're sick or if they have an appointment or for some reason they miss my class, they are trained to go on Schoology and print off the notes key and complete the homework or write down questions that they would have about the homework, and they come into my class the next day like they've never missed part of my instruction. So that's the thing that I really like about Schoology, and the way that I've been able to utilize it in my classroom that I think helps me get students caught up, and then helps my students feel prepared when they come back to class. The last thing I really like about it is that parents can see exactly how I teach my lessons. I think one of the criticisms of Math Common Core is that things are so different and I just don't know how to do it anymore. So parents are able to view the notes and the homework and the types of assessments that I'm giving my students. And so I think they feel a lot more prepared and able to help their child, by clicking on links that I post, and they can do practice problems together. So I think it's a win-win for both the parents and the students in my classroom.
And how are your kids accessing this in the classroom?
Yeah, I would say the majority of them have a smartphone. So something that Brandon's going to talk about in a little bit is how students can access messaging and things like that. But I think they get notifications every time on their smartphone if I post a worksheet or if I post a status update. And so I would say the majority of my students in middle school are using smartphones, but tablets are very popular, and then laptops at home as well.
Yeah, so I have a 6th grade daughter. She's in Mr. Niley's class up at Berkshire, and he'll videotape and do an audio of his lesson. Mm-hmm. So if she gets stuck on her homework, we can go to Schoology, rehear the lesson, and then she can get started back up again on her homework, and it works really well.
I know a lot of teachers that do that, and every once in a while I will show a worksheet or a review packet and videotape myself going through the problem. So exactly like you said, if students get stuck, they can go to the video and watch number 2 to see how to work through the problem.
Very effective.
I appreciate the comment about reaching out to the parents because I think that's a real opportunity for a learning experience for them, especially as you made reference to the math. It's so different. So I think that's a key piece.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'm stuck on fractions and I had to go back. And
Well, I would do it this way.
I just got the calculator out.
There you go.
All right. Well, my name is Brandon Rohrig, and I teach Algebra 1 and Pre-Calculus at Olentangy High School. And as a first-year teacher, Schoology has been a huge help to me in staying organized, connecting with my parents, connecting with my students. So I just want to highlight a few of my favorite uses. I am in love with technology. I mean, my students know I'm glued to my phone just like them. But I've recognized this year just that technology is only as useful in the classroom as it is useful to students. And if it's just cool and flashy, you know, it's just another thing, it'll pass. But I've really found some of the features of Schoology to be foundational to the way I'm doing my classroom. And so first thing I want to highlight is messaging. Using Schoology's messaging feature, students can ask questions and receive help remotely. You probably know in a math classroom there's no shortage of questions and students that need help, but there is a shortage of time with your teacher. And so I get push notifications whenever a student messages me. So if I'm home, I can know right away when a student has messaged me. I can respond, give homework help, point them in the right direction. And that's something I use probably a dozen times a day. And students know the expectation is if you're stuck on something at home, the right thing to do is not do nothing and show up the next day, but it's to first reach out to me. And I don't promise to respond right away. I have a life outside of school, but they know that usually within an hour or two they're going to get some sort of response to help them so that when they show up to class the next day, they're ready to go. We can get started on new material right away. And parents too can download this app. In fact, if parents have multiple children, they can toggle between them really easily in the app. They can see all their assignments in one view as well. And so I encourage students and their parents alike, hey, download the app. You'll get the same functionality you get on the computer, and it'll be really, really portable for you as well. All right, one of my favorite organizational uses of Schoology is the calendar. And as was mentioned earlier, if I assign a date to an item I post, let's say I post a worksheet and say we did this worksheet on January 1st, it'll show up on the calendar without me having to add a separate calendar entry. And that is so useful when students miss class, like Kristen mentioned earlier, that they know to go to the calendar, and not only do they see the name of the lesson they missed, they're linked directly to the homework, the notes, anything else supplementary that I had posted for that day. So it takes away any excuses of, well, I wasn't here, I didn't know what was going on. You know, I'm able to conduct class outside the classroom, and parents too can see this calendar. If they have multiple children enrolled at any level, they'll see one calendar with all of their students' assignments neatly organized, and it makes it extremely easy for parents to keep track of what is going on in their kids' classrooms as well. This is probably where I've used Schoology the most this year, and that is in assessing my students, creating quizzes, and allowing online submissions of assignments. In Algebra 1 this last semester, I gave students a quiz almost every day. And I told them, hey, this is your homework this semester, to go online after every lesson and complete one of these quizzes, and I will be able to see that night how students are doing, what they're struggling with. I'll know exactly what questions to talk about in class the next day. And to be transparent, it wasn't a perfect system because I found that students were very uncomfortable with doing their homework online. It was like it almost carried less weight than a paper assignment. And we've gotten through a lot of that, and I think there's more comfort there now. But it was enlightening to me to see some of the needs for digital literacy among students who've grown up with technology but maybe not used technology in the math classroom. It might have seemed more like a novelty at first, but having just gone through Ohio State myself, I know how frequently your work is done online. And so to be able to expose my high school freshmen to that was really good. We were able to get through some of those barriers of, well, this isn't real homework, or this doesn't matter as much. And now students really look forward to doing things online where they can see how they're doing right after they take a quiz. They know exactly what their level of understanding is, and so do I. These quizzes can be tied directly to learning standards, and so students know exactly what standards they're being quizzed on. I can look through the standards and create quizzes based on those, and so Schoology recognizes what our curriculum is. Online submissions. If you've used a learning management system, you know one of the most common uses is students upload their work and you grade it, and so there's a Dropbox feature that's really nice. One of the best parts about the Dropbox feature is all the ways I can leave feedback. And so I did a writing assignment in pre-calculus this year, much to my students' surprise that they had to write in math class, but they did. And I was able to read their submissions, annotate directly on their submissions, so make notes, highlights, rather than having to download a document, edit it, re-upload it. You could do it all from Schoology. You can even do it now. They recently updated their mobile apps. You can update or annotate anything you want from an app, which is pretty cool. I can be sitting on my couch with my iPad writing on student assignments. A new feature I was just made aware of is you can actually add audio and video feedback to your students through Schoology as well. And so that's something I plan to use in the future. But Schoology, like I said, it seems like the possibilities are endless, what you can do in the classroom. And I feel like my toe's just in the water. I'm looking forward this year to recording video lessons and trying to do a flipped classroom environment where students are watching the lessons at home, coming to class and doing their assignments there. And so that's a goal of mine. You know, first year teacher, I've got a lot of other things to worry about, but that's something that I know Schoology will make very easy because students can get it on every device. And they know what they're doing after having used it for so long in my classroom. So I'm looking forward to that. Thanks.
Great.
Thank you guys for giving us some of your time. And it was actually interesting last week on Twitter, I saw that Schoology was actually one of the 12 companies that are transforming education in 2015 to watch for. So I'm just really excited that we're part of that, and I continue to see how it transforms what our teachers are doing in the classroom.
How, in the classroom, how's the bandwidth? You know, are you seeing like a slowdown? Like, I want the truth here. I mean, if we're going to, you know, continue to invest in technology, like what are some things that might be holding you back? Because I know at work, I'm really hung up on bandwidth right now because we're using so much of it and it's slowing my work down. But anything else?
Sometimes since it's synced with Google Drive, and that's kind of a streaming feature, it's trying to upload. But all the other features of Schoology, even if the bandwidth might be full at that time, you can still access the materials. If they were to go and try to upload an assignment maybe during a busy time, that can be an issue. But we've seen a great improvement from last year to this year. I mean, and I'm on my computer all day at work. I mean, I'm not never on my computer. So have you guys seen there's some kind of spikes sometimes, but
is it?
I haven't, but I will just make one comment that Schoology keeps up a blog of their own support and what they're doing to improve Schoology, and they are really, really responsive and good about responding to needs. So I think my guess is, as a district, if you were to mention some sort of technical issue, they'd be right on it, and they're really active about that.
the customer service is amazing.
Good.
So I guess how widely used or utilized is Schoology across, you know,
The
all
district,
the buildings?
yeah.
Is it half the teachers using it? A third?
Yeah, that's my question too.
Yeah.
What's our
How widely-
participation?
We have about 8,000 active users, and what they do is kind of like a monthly average. So when they do their analytics, because sometimes towards the end of the quarter, there'll be more submissions, so you'll see a spike in usage. So we're sitting at about 8,000
Does
use.
that include teachers, parents, and students?
Teachers and students.
Okay.
And from the teachers that haven't adopted, maybe it's not a fair question, but what's holding them back?
Sometimes we just have to get them in the environment and feel comfortable with the technology. Sometimes we just have to say, okay, tell me what you're doing in a website and let me show you how that can be done in Schoology. We have OPDA courses all throughout the year after school, and then my department does small group trainings. We've been focusing on the elementary levels because there are 15 buildings. We want to get to all of them. So we've been doing small group trainings before school at some of the elementaries as well.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming in on a snow day.
Good job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good job.
All right, the next agenda item is an enrollment discussion. And I'll just set up the discussion and then kind of see what we want to do. But let's say over the last several months of school board meetings, we've looked at enrollment projections really two ways. One is what I'd say our traditional view is the live birth method, which just kind of takes the current projections and rolls it forward using live birth data. And then was the last board meeting, we had the other group come in.
Scott Leopold.
Scott Leopold into the build out, which looks at available parcels and then estimates and develop. It's a much longer view, right? Because it went out to 2043. I think the live birth method doesn't go out quite that far. like many of the themes are the same, but I thought it would be good. And I think Julie gets to start talking about, well, it's kind of now what? Now that we've seen it, does it require us to do anything any differently? So I guess with that, I'd open up to the group, anyone that wants to make any observations or suggestions on maybe where we go from here.
One thing that I just wanted people to realize is that we aren't seeing we aren't seeing a crowd in the elementary schools. We have the seats in the elementary schools. It's the middle and the high schools that are causing the concern, as I think the fifth graders are the bubble right now. And I know that we can make adjustments with our how we do our scheduling and stuff, but at some point, what do you do? And I think that as a board, we need to say, okay, this is how we're going to kind of proceed with this. And this
I guess it's similar to the discussion we had two years ago, maybe 3, where we had looked at if we're going to address, or it's almost like to your point, creating a framework of if we have a space need, what's the order in which we'd like to address that need. And I thought we had talked about schedule.
Yeah.
Technology would be kind of the top 2, and then additions to existing facilities before we would do a full freestanding building. And then from that point through today, we even went a little bit step further and did the graphics way of the Olentangy Academy, is that the right name?
Right.
Yes. Olentangy Academy facility, where it was a cost-effective way of getting some great space. So I think, from a board framework, we started to lay out kind of almost the working order of how we'd try to address those, and we're always, of course, open to other suggestions as well.
I think this coming school year, once we open up the Olentangy Academy, it'll give us a better feel for where we stand at the high school and the middle school, because for those, just as a reminder, we're pulling students out of the Oasis, and they're over at, are they there? They're supposed to be there. Okay. Yeah, I haven't heard that they're not.
They're there.
So we put them in the Olentangy Academy building. And so then next year we're going to start scheduling high school students over there. And so I think at that point we'll be able to get a better feel for it. But I'm hearing in the community, we have, I want to say the veteran people saying, I'm not going through another split, we're not going through another split. And then we have maybe the people who have more elementary age students saying, I don't want my child in a high school with 2,200 students. And so, I don't know that anyone wants to look at building another $63 million building, or it's probably more than that right now.
Probably more than that now.
Yeah, because that's what a high school costs. And I'm not saying that we need a high school, but that's what the numbers were pointing to at our last meeting. Scott Leopold was kind of insinuating that we would need a new facility north, because that's where the population is going to be. And I'm not saying next year we need a new facility north, but for future, right?
Maybe it was out there.
For future planning. And we do have property north, which is a good thing. But at what point, do you make a decision, and at what point? I guess I don't want to get to the point where we're hurting academics because we want to get as many kids into a building as we can. That's what I don't want to get into.
Or it becomes a bad experience.
Yeah, bad experience. You see, kids acting up or falling through the cracks or whatever.
Another bullet you could add, as you were mentioning technology, scheduling, et cetera, another bullet you can add to that is that whole utilization of the classrooms that we've had presentations on.
Oh, like on the configurations? Yeah, lab space.
And, Scott, did that about a year ago or so. He did that whole presentation on how many classrooms are being used and where the vacancies are. That whole business, that's part of the discussion too. If you feel it's
building utilization, I guess.
Right. And
if you want, I could go ahead and mention the Development Committee, Facilities Committee meeting last night, if you feel it's germane. I did go to the meeting. It was a really good meeting. They had full attendance last night. I did not give them direction on behalf of the board, of course, but I gave them an expectation of what's coming. And of course, they're basically familiar with that expectation anyway, but I think it was helpful to articulate that. And that is, we as a board will ask them to look at a variety of means to help with this conversation. And of course, they'll look at it from the facilities point of view, of course. And as Ralph has been very careful over the years, he likes to have a request from the board in writing, and we've done that. And I suggested to him, and I've talked to Roger about it, that the three of us would get together. I think it's important that Ralph be involved in helping craft a draft of a request to the facilities committee of what we would ask them to do, expectations, how it fits into a strategic global review, etc. If we get him to help write that, I think he'll have a better understanding of what's being asked and why. So if that sounds reasonable to everybody, I'll get with Ralph and Roger and we'll figure out a time. And then of course we'll present that draft here, wordsmith it, or massage it, whatever, and then we would of course present it to them. And I think it's something we ought to do pretty soon. But they were very enthusiastic. They understood the general theme of what I was presenting, thinking out of the box. I mentioned the pilot program at Liberty High School. They were nodding their head like, that's great. It's great to think of those kinds of opportunities that are very sophisticated. I consider to be very sophisticated approaches instead of just putting on a trailer on the back of a building. But what are the other opportunities? So they get that. And then the last point is I made a point of saying, at least speaking personally, that I would hope that they would engage other committees and individuals, that this should be a very comprehensive review. So at some point, for example, when you're trying to look at ideas and what their cost implications are, you sit down with finance and audit, or 2 or 3 people. You go to 2020, or 2 or 3 people, and engage those people into a more broad conversation, and not just this committee's doing this, and this committee's doing this, and this one's doing that, but to bring these groups together. And of course, Mark and Jack and Jeff, who's with them all the time. So that's sort of a summary of the discussion. And again, they were very enthusiastic about seeing that as an important mission. I think that'll get their juices flowing pretty well.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, I agree. And the numbers were far enough ahead of the numbers that it gives us options to develop alternative means and alternative. If you look at the Schoology presentation, how does technology help us ease pressure in buildings? So at some point, I guess we're going to probably need to look at building space management, logistics software as well, or as a way to help our building principals and things make these decisions because of what they're going to be managing. They're basically going to be managing an A1 piece of real estate and how that works inside of 200 plus days a year when it needs to be in use. So yeah, I would agree with you. I think that's where we need to go.
And I don't want people to panic because they see, new sewer lines being put in, that we're going to have a big residential boom, because the new residential areas that are being developed, it's not like the villages of Oak Creek or the villages of Alum Creek where, it's hundreds of homes. It's, 24 here, 24 here. We're not seeing the big ones like we had in the past. So I think that they're manageable, and they're not all going to, the parcels aren't going to sell all in one day. So hopefully with the opening of Graphics Way and a gradual addition of the students, we will be able to make the determination. But I don't want anyone to panic.
Yeah, I think as everyone's kind of mentioned, it was great to see that kind of long-term view.
Yeah.
To give us, maybe we should take advantage of the time while we have it to do the planning and sort through the options instead of trying to make those decisions in the heat of the moment where we got to do something next year. We've got a couple-year run here to really kick around different options and considerations before.
Yeah, from the taxpayer perspective, it gives us the opportunity to help manage long-term costs and a longer-term view, as opposed to, again, having to run panicked, and where our choices become extremely limited then on what outcomes can be.
Yeah.
I think we also, we don't want to lose sight of the fact that finally we have a definite number, roughly 25,000. And I'll go back 6 years when I got here, and those numbers were not definite. 30,000, 4 or 5 high schools. So if we know it's 25,000, we know, because we can't build anymore. We're done. We're out of property. So I think we keep that in mind, that's really going to help. Another thing that's out there that we haven't even discussed is the fact that we have a 16th building already passed on a bond issue. We call it an elementary right now. We call Olentangy Academy. It was not on the books 3 years ago. So I know that also when I got here, magnet school was a bad word. And when you look at the grand scheme of things, Olentangy Academy is a magnet school, and will continue to be. We have the flexibility now, though, to also have another magnet school, however you want to look at that. So there are several options. I agree with Dave 100%. I think the facilities committee is going to play a major role on giving the board the expertise and the foresight that they need to really look at a lot of these different options. As everyone was talking, I just sat here and I wrote 8 different options that we have. The most expensive and easiest one is build a 4th high school.
Right.
Right.
That's the easiest one.
That's right.
You just go out and say, we're building this, pass it, please. That's the easiest. I think that's really, to me, and it's always been, that's the last resort. If I can write down 8 options of restructuring grade levels, for example, split schedules, Delaware Career Center has to play a major role. We've got to send more than 40 kids there per class. Yeah,
93.
So therefore around 80 or 90. We have to send 200, 300 kids there. So we continue to work with Mary Beth in regard to, for example, an engineering program that would get some of our kids that are going on to be engineers out of our high schools. So I definitely agree with everyone when they say we don't want 22, 23, 2,400 kids in a high school. But I keep saying, count them, not how many are there overall, but how many are there at one time.
Yeah.
Because we have to also understand the philosophical shift of education. We're a mobile society. If we can live with kids coming and going, and I'll say it again, if we can live with kids coming and going, we're going to be fine. If we can't live with that, then we have to really kind of narrows down our options.
Well, and that just brings up the whole social
Absolutely.
aspect of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
To have that home school,
Yes.
and then you say you're going here, you're going there.
Yeah. As long as you always have that home base, I think our
that's
kids are
critical.
happy. They want to know where I go. Do I go to Orange? Do I go to Olentangy? Do I go to Liberty? But at other times, they're okay going other places.
So I guess more to come on that, and definitely appreciate you taking a lead.
So we'll get together and we'll bring
I
something.
think it's a big year for facilities committee.
Like to make that happen in February if we can.
And I know that's been a constant conversation with this group and with our group at DLT. That probably comes up every week, at least.
I would say so. Yeah.
Twice a month, at least. So,
And just so people know, the Career Center, as a board, we did vote to consolidate campuses. We have the building on 23. We also have a building a lot of people don't realize in Delaware City off of 521, which is the road where, it's off of 36, 37 where Oakland Nursery is. And that was the original location. So we're going to bring everyone down. We have kids from Buckeye Valley, Big Walnut, Delaware City, Olentangy, Worthington, and Westerville. We have some outliers, but those are our main feeders. We're going to bring them all to the 23 building and renovate and expand that building. But it's great location for our kids because it's still in our district. Right. They can see it. But that probably won't come. It won't be done until probably 2019. So.
Okay. Anything else on that item? No? Thank you. Okay, public participation?
There is none.
Okay. Dr. Lucas, you want to present your superintendent?
I would like to
action
present superintendent action items A and B for approval, please.
You need to pull any out? No?
I don't believe so.
Motion?
Motion to accept as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second.
Please call the roll. Go ahead.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes. Okay, our next meeting is Thursday, January 22nd at 6 p.m. Thank you.